We all set to go?
Is the red light on?
The red light is on. Part 2.
The red light is on the camera, and the on-air light is on. So welcome to episode 5 of the Broker Loaded Podcast. It's a podcast all about real estate. I'm Kurt Studley.
And I'm Dan Grimes.
Dan Grimes has written a book. I mean, you wouldn't know it to look at him, but he's an author. And we covered this in episode 4. This is part 2 of 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. That's the book you wrote.
That's the one I wrote. That's the title of the book.
Right. When did you write this again?
I think I said 15 years ago.
Somewhere
last
in that
week.
area?
I think I checked, though. I think it's about 13 years.
Yes. And
all the information's just as relevant today.
Strangely, it's as relevant today as it was back then.
Hasn't changed in 40 years.
We covered a bunch of topics, mostly talked about in part 1 of this podcast, 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. We covered a lot about the buyers being prepared, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of circle back this time in part 2 to a couple of things we kind of brushed over in part 1. But we want to emphasize how important these particular topics are.
Yeah, I think we ended, or we touched on how important it is to choose the right realtor to work with. You know,
that's one of the things we want to go a little more in depth with in part 2. And by the way, it is a downloadable book, 54 Mistakes to Avoid When Buying a Home. You can find it at DannyGrimes.com. That's him.
DannyGrimes.com.
Right? That's
yes,
him
that's
right
me.
there. And you can download the book. It's short paragraphs and a couple paragraphs on each topic and
Cole's notes.
Cole's
notes
vital
format.
information though. Vital information. I couldn't believe as I went through it. It was stunning to me how important each and every one of the items are. 54, and you kind of whittled that down as we discussed last time from a larger number.
Yeah, and it's the input from realtors actually right across North America.
Right.
I mean, I didn't think up the 100 and whittle it down to 54. I had some help with that.
Right. But it's downloadable and valuable information if you're a buyer, a seller, a realtor, what have you. DannyGrimes.com is the website. It's right there. You can just download it.
And we won't bother you when you do.
No, there's no
lead capture. That's not what it's there for. So there'll be no follow-up. Like we said last week, if you like one of us, call one of us.
Right. That'd be a fine idea, and that's up to you. Yeah. But that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Yeah. Number 6 of the 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. Make sure you choose the right realtor for you.
That is important.
It is one of the most important of the group dealing with selecting realtors and working with realtors to me.
In the home buying process, why wouldn't it be the most important?
Yes, because it's vital to be on the same page as your realtor. It's vital to have a realtor who understands not only what you want, but gets a feel for you.
Your wants, needs, and must-haves. Yeah, certainly. We all have different personalities. Mm-hmm. You're going to be dealing with buying probably the largest financial investment in your life.
Right.
And you want to feel comfortable on a personal level.
Right.
With the person you choose to work with.
Because in many instances, and certainly with a realtor like myself, I'm a relational realtor versus a transactional realtor.
Right. Yeah. That's important.
There becomes a connection, right? You become fast friends. There's no question about it in most cases. At least I like to think that. Yeah. And, you're working together, and you have to have that groove, that compatibility is vital to getting exactly where you want to be.
So how do we discover that compatibility?
That's a good question. People go about it different ways, right?
So I'll ask you. You meet somebody at an open house, Kurt,
mm-hmm.
and you tend to bond. A lot of potential buyers meet their agents, actually go shopping for an agent at open houses.
Right.
So you don't see a lot of open houses now. We're in December of 2021.
Right.
Going through the whole COVID process. But should you meet somebody out in a social situation and they say, yes, I'd like to talk to you about buying a home, what's the process you use?
Well,
What's your thoughts?
Well, for me, it's there's you can discern an immediate connection with somebody. Am I
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Right. It's
yes.
that's part of human nature, and that's part of certainly who I am. Is I had to in my previous life in broadcasting had to
Yeah.
connect with people immediately so I could help them get their message across, whatever that was. So it's the same for me. I want to have that connection with people, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I certainly don't want to start a very important conversation about buying a home with a potential buyer and client of mine. I don't want to have that conversation in the middle of an open house. What I want to do is, first of all, have an interaction and set up a time where I can, we can actually sit down together and have a detailed conversation about what they're after and how I can help them.
Sounds like a first date.
It really is.
It really is.
So that's
when
the
you
kind of
think-
way I go about it, because an open house, assuming it's busy and so on, and you got to keep an eye on things, but you can have a touch with a certain person who's, you can tell if they're very interested in buying a home, I'm sure, and very interested in working with you. So you make that immediate connection, then set up a time to sit down and have a detailed conversation.
So to make the process more organized and to gain confidence in both parties, what type of information would we be looking for as realtors when we sit down at that first meeting?
There's a ton of information that you want to get from buyers, and I'm certain it's the reverse, right?
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
that first meeting is can be a feeling out process to make sure everybody's on the right sort of train of thought. But first and foremost, you want to get information on, are they prepared? You want to find out if they're prepared. If we call it qualified. I don't like to use that term, but there's many qualifications that go into it. Let's say you make that connection and you're feeling good about it. You want to drill down on a number of issues, one of them being finances and where they stand, what their budget, what they think their budget is, and what the real budget is, because as realtors we can help them with that, and see how far along they are in the process, and then depending on where that lands, you determine what their next steps might be, and we certainly can help with that process in terms of lining up what you need to do next, right?
Absolutely.
So finances is one thing.
We assume when we meet with somebody, or I assume when I meet with somebody, if it's either in their house or a more formal setting at an office, which we're not really doing these days, we've already qualified. We've had that discussion about pre-qualification,
Right.
who they're dealing with. I always like to get the name of the broker if they're dealing with a broker, maybe contact information for down the road, any potential questions with someone they're dealing with at the bank.
Right.
But then when I sit down with them, I kind of like to drill into what their wants, needs, and must-haves. A lot of first-time buyers, their expectations
Yes.
are very high.
Yes. And there's a lot of first-time buyers who aren't familiar with the process, aren't familiar with how the relationship with your realtor works.
Yeah.
So there's a vast sort of area where buyers fall into.
Right.
And it's up to the realtor to determine just where they sit
Yep.
in the entire process.
I
Right?
think your realtor should be asking you questions based on the wants, needs, and must-haves. Let's call it priorities. What are your priorities in a home? Depending on the area, depending on your price range. Things like schools in the neighborhood. Is a particular school
Right.
important to you for your child to attend?
We've certainly had that happen, and I know
Absolutely.
from experience I have where, it was the choice of one school.
Yeah.
I want my children to go to this school,
Yeah.
and I need something that falls within that catchment zone.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, that is vital. That's one of the things at the top of their list.
I'll tell you one thing that's overlooked when it comes to schools. Schools are probably one of the most important criteria for a young family with young kids, especially if you have a 3 and a 4-year-old, let's just say they're a year away from preschool. As an example, if you're moving into a new neighborhood, I know where I'm living, and that's Riverside South in Ottawa, for
Right.
those of you listening. Most people in Ottawa know where that is. As a new development develops and stretches out towards its original boundary, school borders can change as they did out here. A perfect example out here was many people ended up buying on the other side of Armstrong.
Right.
And most realtors and most people know where that is, and Stranherd. What happened was the school boards changed the border, so people that literally moved a block away to the other side of the street all of a sudden found out their children weren't going to qualify to go to the school that they wanted them to go to,
They're in a different
or
zone.
had been attending.
Right.
And new home builders don't tend to tell you things like that.
No.
They
So
don't.
you really, that's it's so important to
Oh,
so
boy.
many people. So that's the sort of thing you want to impart to your realtor. Once you're sitting down, once you're getting drilling down into your wants, your needs, your
And your
must-haves, which is, by the way, number 8 of the 54. We're talking about the 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home, and number 6 on the list is choose the right realtor for you. That's the discussion we're having today. By the way, you can download the book, DannyGrimes.com. It's called 54 Mistakes to Avoid When Buying a Home. We're talking about them in part 2 of this particular series, and DannyGrimes.com is the website where you can get it. So you're sitting down with your realtor, your newfound realtor. You've made a connection as a buyer. You're comfortable, and you're starting to divulge information, financial information, your wants, your needs, your must-haves in a home.
List your top 5 priorities in a home wouldn't be a bad suggestion.
Right.
Most people can come up with those right off the top of their head.
Yeah. So the top 5 would be?
I generally, in a neighborhood like I'm living in, schools, certainly. Definitely amenities in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I moved out here, it reminded me of the home I grew up in Alta Vista, because of my proximity to the river. I was very close to the Rideau River in Alta Vista.
You're doing very well at talking into the microphone
I'm
today.
trying.
By the way.
My lips are touching. It must look like I have a red Christmas nose
I've
today.
been providing Danny with some instructions.
Yes.
Considering my previous career as a broadcaster, and speaking directly into the microphone has become, one of the things I remind him of. And
It was an issue.
I just wanted to say you're doing a very good job at that
Thank you.
today.
That's why he's wearing the headphones,
That's right.
because I didn't want to mess up my hair.
What if there is no connection? What if you get to that meeting and you're not happy? Well, not that you're not happy, but you realize that maybe this realtor isn't the right realtor for you, or the opposite of that. The realtor realizes that maybe this isn't a good match.
Then you move on and you try and find another realtor.
Right.
And the same goes for the realtor.
We talked about, talking to various realtors, right?
Oh, there's more and more. Well, not so much today but when the market was at a level, and if you're a busy enough realtor, first of all, you have to be able to afford to say no to a client.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the top realtors are very open about it and will just say, I don't think we're a good fit.
Right.
And they're doing you a favor. If you're a buyer, don't be insulted if a realtor says, we're not a good fit. I just don't think we're going to match.
Maybe that realtor understands that you need a lot of time, and he or she doesn't have that time, or what have you. But there's various reasons, right?
There's the other. You just brought up a good point. If you're dealing with a single realtor as opposed to a team, and you feel you need that constant contact,
Mm-hmm.
you may not get that with a team. You want to. I think you should be dealing with a lead realtor.
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't be going into a situation like this where you're anticipating working with a specific realtor, but then kind of being drifted off into a buyer's representative,
Right.
where you won't have as much contact with that lead realtor. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with that.
No.
I'm just suggesting personalities. There's many personalities that just want to get the job. I want to buy a home. Just provide me with the information. I'll view them. I'll make my decision. But there's many great realtors out there and many more buyers that like that one-on-one contact.
Sure.
You know?
That's the way I like to work, and that's why I'm a single agent, right? Of course, with the backing of your brokerage or your full-service brokerage and so on, but working as a single entity allows me, for example, and this is the way I like to operate, to have that one-on-one contact with my clients, be they buyers, sellers, or otherwise.
But, and you are that type of agent, but you're also working for RE/MAX, which means you actually have a team behind you.
Exactly.
You have an absolute support staff behind you that's answering the phones,
Yep.
that's making appointments, but you're also the type of agent that you're not shy to give out your direct cell phone number.
No.
And I'm that way. If a buyer has a question that I'm working with,
Right.
call me.
Yep.
If I don't answer, it means I'm shooting a podcast with Kurt or doing something else. Or text me.
Practicing your microphone skills.
Yeah.
Right.
If you have a realtor's personal number, their cell phone number,
Yes.
it's best just to text them.
Yes.
Because no matter what situation they're in, they can read it. They can decide on how urgent the importance.
And besides,
get back to
isn't
you.
the norm nowadays? You can't actually just call somebody. You must text them first to see if they're available to talk on the telephone. Is that not correct?
Well, I don't even know why.
Isn't that the decorum
Yes, it
that
is.
we follow these days?
It is.
I get them from my own mother. Hey, are you available to talk?
Yeah.
Well, yes. All you have to do is call.
Notice we haven't discussed email or broad email. I can't believe people are emailing. My nephew, as an example,
Yeah, but
doesn't even listen to his voicemails.
Yeah, I think email, for me at least, and I think for many others, has become an exchange of information. Like if I have to send documents or what have you,
That's what
you
it
do
is.
it with email. But, texting has become, I think, the norm.
If you're a buyer and you're working with a realtor, please don't email them. It's a longer process. Just
I
text
don't know.
them.
Listen, you can email me anytime. You can text. You can call. It doesn't matter. I've got, this is like the lifeline, right? So
True enough.
you
Fair
know,
enough.
Yeah. But at any rate, we digress. We're talking about the 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. This is part 2 of that discussion. And we're going to have many more parts to this because there is a list that is 54 items long. We're talking about basically 6, 7, and 8 here. 6 is choose the right realtor for you. Goes hand in hand with 7, which maybe we should get into now.
Sure.
Understand the role of a realtor and who they represent. Okay? It's very important, and I do take the time to explain this and go over this at various points in my relationship with clients, just to make sure they understand who's working for who, who's representing whom, and what happens when.
Well, then you'd be best to respond to that.
Okay.
So I'm a buyer.
Yes. I like this role-playing part of the podcast.
Who are you
Fun for
representing?
me.
Who are you representing?
If I'm the...
I'm your buyer. What are the ways that you can represent me in purchasing a home?
Out of the gate, what I say is, I work for you.
Okay.
I make that perfectly clear. I work for you.
Right.
Now, indirectly, you actually pay for my service, but not out of your pocket.
No.
The transaction ends up as the seller is the one who doles out the commission, right? It comes from the seller's side. So
Correct.
whatever the commission rate is, the seller's brokerage, the seller's realtor's brokerage gets some of that. The buyer's realtor's brokerage, not the realtor themselves, get some of that depending on what the commission is and what the split is and all that sort of thing. So you know, a lot of realtors will look at buyers and say, oh, well, my services cost you nothing. Well, you have to buy a house, right? So you're actually spending your money,
Yeah.
which means indirectly speaking, sure, you're paying for the realtor services. Indirectly.
Indirectly, you are.
But,
Yeah.
you know, let's not get lost in the fact that, oh, well, my services are free to you.
Oh, that's
Well,
a discussion that realtors
Yeah.
have with each other that's just old and dated.
yeah, I
and-
know. So, but ultimately, I make it clear to my buyer client, and Danny Grimes, you're my buyer. I work for you. So we're gonna take this in a direction that you're comfortable with. Because ultimately, you're my client. I am going to look after your needs. I'm going to give you the best possible advice I can give you.
Right.
I'm going to give you updated, the latest and most vital information that you require. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'm going to collect information from you on, you know, where you live, your phone number, your employer, what you do for your employer. These are all bits of information that we need to collect along the way. So,
Yep.
what's the one most important word to me in when we talk about a realtor and their relationship with their buyer client, seller client, any client is trust.
Number one.
Because
Number one.
you need that trust because they're buyers and sellers are divulging a lot of information, right?
Yes, and buyers, you know, let's get into like to become a client. Ultimately, we won't get into the technical aspects. This is for the public. Realtors know, you know. I'm going to paraphrase it, but as a buyer, you will be asked to sign a buyer's representative agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes,
Yes.
at some point,
At some point,
depending on the realtor and
depending on
The
the
situation.
relationship
Yeah.
and the comfortability, but you will be asked to sign
yeah,
one of those.
yeah,
And in that document and in the working with a realtor document, it will clearly state the 3 different relationships that you can enter into with a realtor.
By the way, I think we're at 17 minutes. I forgot to start the clock.
I know. I noticed that.
17 minutes. I may check my nicely done.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are the 3 different types of relationships that you can enter into. But the one that you're referring to, becoming a client, really it's solidified when that buyer's agency agreement is signed.
That's right. And it's signed with the
In
brokerage.
most cases.
It's not signed with an individual agent, by the way. It's signed
No,
with
it's
the brokerage.
Signed with the
technically.
brokerage.
But
That's correct.
your first contact, your point of contact with the brokerage is the realtor,
Yes.
right? So, you know, your agreement is technically with the brokerage, but you're working with the realtor who's representing
Yeah.
the brokerage.
It also, once that agreement is signed too, let's be honest, it gives the realtor that confidence that you're confident in their ability to work together and find you a home.
Yes.
It is a commitment, and that's,
Yeah. Now, I must be honest, early in my career, I got burned a couple of times because I didn't get that agreement signed. And you learn,
yeah, you learn.
right? I don't walk up at my first meeting and say, I can't say a word until you sign this.
No.
No, that's not the way it works. But there comes a point where, listen, we have to sign this document for me to represent you properly and to, for example, draft an offer and have you sign it. I need that representation. Otherwise, I can't do it.
No. And you say you got burnt, that's the one thing, and we're in the Ottawa Hull area, so there probably are buyers looking over on the Quebec side as well, as many do.
You said
over-
Hull area? Yeah.
Hull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hull.
Yeah.
There's
no.
Gatineau and there's Hull.
Yes, okay.
The Chez Henri was in Hull. So, okay, so the Gatineau area. The one rule I do like about Quebec real estate, those who show the home get paid.
That's the way it works.
That's the way it works.
Nicely done.
So if I show you the home and,
Right.
and the listing realtor does the offer,
Right.
he's not getting paid.
There you have it.
You will get paid. So,
Nice.
anyway, we don't have that here. That's why that agreement is important to your realtor, and you shouldn't be shy to sign it at some point. Sooner the better.
Yes. It's very important.
Yeah. sooner
It
the
solidifies your relationship. It becomes,
Yeah.
valid in all points of the law, I guess.
And the realtors will go, they go over that form as well. You'll be given a pamphlet.
Yes,
as well,
and
pointed out.
don't be afraid to even ask your realtor for a preview of the documents you'll be signing, including that agreement of representation.
Absolutely.
Like,
Why not?
we have no problem. Listen, I love sending those documents over. Matter of fact, when it comes to especially first-time buyers, like there's a lot. I send them immediately. I send them the buyer's guide that I have because it has all kinds of information on how to line things up.
Yeah.
In terms of timing and what you should be doing when, because that's a big question for a lot of people.
That's a huge question.
But I often offer at least to send them, an agreement of purchase and sale so they can look at it, and if they have questions, you can answer them.
I think all any documentation that's going to be signed by a buyer on an over half, it doesn't matter the price, but on a large investment like a home, they should have the right to review it. I mean, it should it should be default that the realtor send them everything that's going to be signed.
Well, yeah, I'd go over it line by line. Some of the things in those agreements make a lot of sense. Some of them don't. And some of them come with questions.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you pre-examine that? That way, considering the Ottawa market, for example, and how quickly you might have to move on a property that comes up, for example, then you've already reviewed the documents. You know what are in the documents, so your realtor can draw up an agreement of purchase and sale as quickly as possible, and you get your offer in. So there's no messing around. Just it's another part of being prepared to me, right?
100%.
Yeah.
You have to be.
So understanding the role of your realtor and who they represent is truly important and vital to your relationship. And your realtor will be able and should be able to explain to you just what they can or cannot do when it comes to that representation.
And that should be done. You do that at the first meeting, the first formal meeting, like I said earlier, either in somebody's office, either at a coffee shop, or preferably in somebody's home.
Yeah.
Especially if they have a home to sell before they buy.
Well,
Kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
Get to preview their home and then sit down and talk to them about the buying process.
Yes.
I mean, I happen to deal with a lot of seniors because of my advanced age, and a lot of them haven't bought or sold a home in 60 years.
Right.
They're in their original home that they raised their
Essentially,
family in.
they become first-time home buyers.
This is all new to them.
Yes.
It's all new. And
the process changes. It evolves.
And in those cases, I do print out all the forms and go over just like I used to do.
Yes.
And not, send.
Do you bring carbon paper with you?
Well,
You don't anymore, eh?
no, I don't. No,
I
I
bet you
don't
there's
go
some
that.
in this house, though.
If I was asked, though, I'm prepared to. Definitely.
You could.
Absolutely. Why not?
You could. We're talking about the 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. We've been covering what we think are very important. Many of them are super important, but this is vital when you're starting out on the process of buying a home. Choosing the right realtor for you is number 6. Number 7 is understand the role of a realtor and who they represent. And number 8, let's touch on that now because it's part and parcel. We have gone over it briefly, but don't start shopping without a wish list. Your wants, needs, and must-haves are what I've been talking about. And it's actually writing that down is a great exercise.
It has to be. The wants, needs, must-haves. What are your top priorities?
Do you think putting it in your notes on your phone is writing it down? Is that the same thing as writing it down? Not to you.
I don't.
Not
You'd
to
have
me.
to show me. I know I have something on my phone called Notepad.
Some people write stuff down, and I do it sometimes too.
Yeah.
Put it in notes or wherever.
I
on
text
your phone.
myself.
I suppose that's writing it down.
Yeah, but how often do you text and read text that you text to yourself? That's my
Wow.
problem.
Yeah, you look at it and you go, "Oh, I texted myself about
texted
something. I'll read that later."
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but I find I remember things better if I actually use a pen and a piece of paper and write them down.
So do I. That's on my day book. I'm hoping to get my new 2022.
Do the kids of today, Danny, do they write things down?
No.
I don't know.
Well, my daughter's 27 and she doesn't.
She doesn't write anything down. So
Actually, that's not fair. She does write down things, but then I've seen her write them down and then forward them to her, whatever she's carrying.
I got us at 24 minutes ish. You know, so yeah, actually having that list. You mentioned your top 5 things. So we're talking about, initially speaking, just to zero in on it. First of all, that like the size and style of your home are super important. But what you want in terms of location, schooling, lot size, actual size of home, those are things you really have to consider. Then you get into the details of bedrooms, bathrooms, finished basement. All
Yeah,
that
like
stuff.
you touched on, you said location,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes further than, what geographical area are you interested in buying in? But then when you get right down to a neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much building going on in our region right now, location's very important. And even you may not want to back onto multi-residential buildings if you're in an area like I'm in and there's a big tract of vacant land behind you. You want to investigate what's going to be built or what the potential
Right.
is behind that. That's one of the other things to look out for and mistakes not to make, but it's worth mentioning that right now.
You're right, because depending on what's surrounding you, things could change, and they change rapidly here. And there's parcels of land, I'm sure, that are set for development that not everybody would know about, right? You can find out, and your realtor can help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. And never depend on a site plan when you go into a new home office as well, because that site plan is it's a model.
Yeah.
It's nothing laid in stone.
No.
The approved site plan.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you go into a new home and you're looking at where the park is and where the new schools are,
Right.
these are generally all things that haven't been approved yet.
Yeah, and there might be some vacant spots across the street from you or up the street, and that might be important for you to know.
Yeah.
Just what is planned for that area and when.
Yeah.
And oftentimes your realtor can dig into the details for you. By the way, there's tons of information on the city's website that is available to people.
I know.
It's right there if you're that type of person to investigate.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's one of the things I like to do when we're talking about our relationship with our clients, especially buyers. And I like to help them to educate themselves in what buying a home is all about, and the questions that go with that. Visit the city website, find out where your tax information is available to you, and bus routes and train routes and transportation issues and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
All that is available to people. So I like to point out these things so they can dive into it themselves, and it helps them in the home buying process, because the more you understand, the more power you have, the more knowledge you have, the easier this becomes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Driving around the neighborhood in the daylight hours on a weekend. How busy is the area? I mean, there's people out here. When I bought the home that I'm in now on Shoreline Drive, it was a bus route.
Right.
But it wasn't a priority to me. It didn't matter to me that I was on a bus route. But I did phone, and as the development was being developed, I found out after we bought that in fact it was just a temporary bus route. So when they stopped running the bus, it made the street more attractive to people.
Did you actually phone or text?
No, I actually called. I actually called the counselor because
call.
Our kids were in the same daycare.
The phone call, a lost art.
Yeah.
We're discussing the 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home.
Yeah.
Choose the right realtor for you is number 6. Understand the role of a realtor and who they represent, number 7, and number 8, which we're discussing currently. Yeah. Don't start shopping without a wish list, your wants, your needs, your must-haves. I want to point out that this book, it's invaluable. It's got so many things in it that Danny threw in there back in the day. 54 items that they all hold value. DannyGrimes.com is the website where you can just download it. Apparently, there are paper copies available around. I shouldn't say available, around. And if you happen to have one,
I'll autograph it.
listen, it may have value in itself.
It could.
This is a rare book.
There's 1,000 copies in circulation.
Is that all?
That's
Like
it.
actual paper copies?
Actual paper copies.
I mean, with the size of the book and so on, it's easily downloadable, easy,
Oh,
easy,
don't even
easy
can
reference
carry
material.
it on your phone.
DannyGrimes.com, 54 mistakes to avoid when buying a home. Am I
Yep.
doing a good job of pumping you up about, your...
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like
right?
there's something in it for you.
There's not, really. I got a free copy of the book, and, well, you can too. So...
So to sum it up, because
Yes.
we're hitting our 30 minutes, we
We
cannot.
sure are.
We cannot
We're at
over.
30 minutes now, I think.
Okay, well, we've pretty well got it down to 35, somewhere between 34 and 37. But to summarize,
Yes.
I can't overemphasize how important it is to sit down with a potential realtor that you're considering working with and spend some time talking with them.
Yes.
All things are important. Kurt, for instance, could walk into my house if I was considering sitting down and working with him to buy or sell a home. And the minute I opened my door, it would be a no-go. Simply because of the baseball cap he's chosen to wear today.
Now, for those of you listening at home, I currently have my Toronto Maple Leafs Carhartt. What is it called? Carhartt hat.
I
And
don't
that's
even know what that means.
That is a company that originally made overalls, construction overalls, that
Oh.
brown material that my hat is. Yeah, Carhartt.
Now I get it.
Now they make all kinds of supplies like that, and they've been around for years. And this is one of my favorites. I have a Carhartt Red Sox hat. I have a couple other ones.
They've obviously been around since 1967.
Danny became really upset when I walked in with this hat because, of course, the team I cheer for is doing quite well,
Yeah.
and the team that old red microphone over there cheers for is not doing so well.
The Habs. The Habs.
I have lots of friends who are Habs fans. Matter of fact, I was on a Zoom call doing some trivia on the weekend last week.
Were you?
With 4 brothers, the McGinnis brothers from Cape Breton.
Okay.
And they're all Habs fans. And they're all like, well, we need some advice. You've been a long-suffering fan. What's it like? How do I deal with this?
Yeah, well, Habs fans are never long-suffering fans.
No, that's true. I mean, they'll instantly revert to their...
Did we get to the Cup last year?
Did you win it?
No.
Oh.
Did you guys?
I forgot because nobody remembers who finishes second.
No, I know. Did you get to round 1?
No, we didn't beat the Montreal Canadiens in round 1.
No.
We didn't.
No.
I should say we, and I don't like that saying that.
You had the same team
My
last
team
year
did
as you
not.
have this year, and you couldn't get it done.
Once
I'm not
again,
one to go Notre Dame.
I
That's
like
all
it
I
when
can
you
say.
prove my point that
Yeah,
you're
I
just
did.
living in the past. Thank you very much.
So
Listen,
next week, what are we going to talk about?
I think we'll talk. Let's talk Christmas stuff maybe because are we getting to that point?
I want to talk cottages because it was brought. A group of realtors started talking about what's going on. A group of Ottawa realtors started talking about places of value, good deals to buy, and they brought up a couple of ski resort areas.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot going on at Tremblant, higher end.
Right.
There's a lot
hard
going
to get
on
a
up
place
at
at
Mont Ste.
Tremblant.
Marie, which takes you right up the historical 105.
Right.
Great deals up around there, and there is a lot going on finally in terms of potential development of Mont Ste. Marie, which 40 years ago they were calling.
You're
the
talking
next
about ski
Tremblant.
chalets. I thought we were going to talk about cottages.
Well, Mont Ste. Marie is surrounded by Heaney Lake, 31 Mile, Blue Sea Lake,
Lac Ste.
Pemmican.
Marie?
Well, Lac Ste. Marie is that's the town, yeah. But up that way, some of the most popular large and small lakes in the Ottawa region.
I'd love to have
Great
a cottage
deals.
for Christmas or a chalet. Anyway, we'll get into that more, but we want to thank you for joining us on episode 5 of a podcast called The Broker Loaded Podcast. You can email us, TheBrokerLoadedPodcast@gmail.com. You can find
It's right
you
there.
can find this podcast on our YouTube channel, which is called The Broker Loaded Podcast, or you can find it on our Facebook page called
The Broker Loaded Podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Danny, as always, a pleasure Have yourself a great day, my friend.
You too.
Thanks for
Thanks,
listening and
everybody.
watching. See ya.
Bye.